This little girl right here, this is Nyara Givens. She was 13. She had 6 brothers and sisters and wanted to be a hairstylist when she grew up. Instead, she died this week in an alley between apartment buildings after she got into an argument with another 13-year-old girl who reportedly slashed her throat with a pocket knife. There was no cop there to save her. No one stopped the girl who stabbed her. And now she's dead. Meanwhile, in Columbus, Ohio, leftists are outraged because a white police officer shot a 16-year-old black girl as she was trying to stab another black girl with a knife. Because we're no longer talking about unarmed black people dying from police brutality. Now, we've reached a place where no white cop can ever shoot a black person no matter the circumstances. And it's actually better to let teenagers stab each other to death than for a cop with the wrong skin color to do anything about it. You want to know why a whole lot of people are very much against police misconduct, but can't take Black Lives Matter seriously? This sack of disingenuous, willfully illogical garbage right here. 13-year-old Nyara Givens lost her life Monday after police say she was stabbed in the neck by another child in the green space between 2 apartment buildings where she lived. By the time police arrived on the scene, they found Givens with a stab wound to her neck and her dad trying to stop the bleeding. She was rushed to Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center where she died. The 13-year-old girl who allegedly killed her has now been charged with murder. And unless you live in or around Cincinnati or you spend all your time on the internet, I'm guessing you probably didn't hear much about this story because it didn't follow the prescriptive narrative. This was another black child lost to violent crime in her own neighborhood. There was no police officer there to help her. No cop was standing by to save her life and cause an uproar because he happened to be the wrong skin tone in that community. She doesn't make for a good martyr for the left's agenda. So now she's just dead, and no one really cares. Over in Columbus, Ohio, though, we've got a whole different ball of wax. Here we see a 16-year-old black girl trying to stab another black girl with a knife. Except this time, there was a cop on the scene who was able to stop it, who happened to be white, and who shot the girl with the knife. And now suddenly this whole thing is supposedly his fault. According to Congresswoman Cori Bush, Ma'Khia Bryant was a 16-year-old baby who was shot and killed by police. So 16-year-olds who Democrats say are competent enough to be able to vote are now back to being babies for convenient narrative purposes. Try to keep up here, okay? So see this chick here? The one with the hair and the blue jeans and the, I don't know, giant blade in her hand? Does she look like a baby to you? Does anything about her scream toddlers and tiaras? This is not a 5-year-old who accidentally picked up her mom's meat cleaver. This is a very large teenager who's about to stab somebody pinned up against a car. I know that doesn't fit the whole innocent black victim narrative the left wants to peddle every single time a black person gets shot by the cops because they've decided the only factors that ever matter in this situation are the race of the shooter and the race of the dead person. Never mind whether that person got shot was armed and in this case trying to shank somebody in a driveway in broad daylight. We're just going to ignore all of that because the cop was white and that automatically makes this whole entire thing his fault. So now the Monday morning quarterbacks who have never faced this kind of situation in their lives are criticizing him. Here's Obama's former senior advisor, Valerie Jarrett, sorry to bring her up, I know we're all really trying hard to repress that memory, saying we should demand accountability for Ma'Khia Bryant because, quote, a police officer immediately decided to shoot her multiple times in order to break up a knife fight. Well, yeah, brain trust, to break up a knife fight being a pretty relevant part of that sentence, don't you think? He told her to get down, she didn't, and then she lunged at somebody with a blade. What was he supposed to do, just stand there until the second girl had been carved up like a Thanksgiving turkey before he did anything? Well, apparently that's exactly what he was supposed to do, at least according to activist Bree Newsom, who helps head up the Defund the Police movement, and who told her 466,000 followers on Twitter that teenagers have been having fights, including fights involving knives, for eons. We do not need police to address these situations by showing up to the scene and using a weapon against one of the teenagers. Teens have been having knife fights for eons? Like, what, head to the mall, play some quick truth or dare, knife fight before we catch a movie? What kind of a hellhole fight club did you grow up in? Maybe it's my white privilege showing here, but where I come from, teenagers were not duking it out in the cul-de-sac with blades on the regular. Someone came at you with a piece from their mama's butcher block and you were having an abnormally bad day. But while we're on the subject of what's normal and what's not, you know why police most often show up to a scene like this in the first place? Because someone calls them. They aren't just wandering around the neighborhood prowling for unsuspecting black folk. Someone in the community reports a crime and asks for their help. Before Ma'Khia Bryant was shot, someone had called the cops. Before Adam Toledo was shot, multiple people had called the cops. And it happens that way just about every time, all the way back to Mike Brown. The cops show up because people in the neighborhood call and ask them for help with a situation the residents cannot deal with on their own. So you know what? If you don't want the police coming in and doing their job and saving your butts, stop calling them. See, that's what no one on the left wants to talk about. No one's asking why the cops keep getting called into neighborhoods to deal with rampant violent crime in the first place, only to then have people get pissed off when they show up and do their jobs. For that matter, no one's asking the girl who almost got stabbed to death how she feels about the fact that she's alive right now because this cop stopped her attacker. I bet the family of Nyara Givens wished that she'd had a cop there to protect her, and I doubt really seriously that they would have cared what color he was. And every time this happens, the left keeps rushing to blame the cops without asking why we've got 16-year-olds brandishing knives or 13-year-olds running around with guns in the first place. Where are the parents? Where are the dads? Maybe that's a relevant factor, I don't know. Where are the people who are supposed to be raising these kids to not be dangerous criminals who have to be put down by a cop before they can kill someone? It's your job to make sure your kid doesn't think going after someone with a knife is an acceptable game plan. You want to find an adult to blame here? Start there. I'm sorry police killed a 16-year-old this week. Frankly, I'm mostly sorry for the cop who had to show up and deal with this suckfest. I'm sorry that a 16-year-old felt the need to stab someone and put herself in a position to be shot in the first place, and that clearly someone in her life failed her. But when you are holding a knife, trying to plant it in someone else's torso, you just went from being a kid to being a lethal threat. Your age doesn't make you any less deadly, and for that matter, neither does your skin tone. It's one thing to demand justice for unarmed people who died due to excessive force. It is entirely another to blame the police for every inevitable consequence of bad parenting, or to say cops should stand back and let teenagers slice each other up like sushi because we've reached a place where no white cop can ever shoot a black person no matter the circumstances, full stop. That the black person is always innocent and the cop is always guilty based solely on the fact that he's got a badge and maybe a little less melanin. That's why no one with half an ounce of common sense takes Black Lives Matter or the Defund the Police movement or all the leftist politicians who support them seriously. Because they are so blinded by racism and hate, they would rather a black girl get stabbed to death by another black girl than for a white cop to save her life. And that's your Reality Check America. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble pages, like us on Facebook and Twitter, and stay sane out there.